Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter. This is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happens. So today, we return once more to the campaign of the mountain, and our heroes are ready to venture into the Shadow Labyrinth. Now, the Shadow Labyrinth took several gaming sessions, so we're going to go into depth on this one because it really was a labyrinth. Just a sprawling fucking dungeon that was made for no other purpose than to kill people who were trying to get after the Tablet of Secrets. Now, I've got like a little thing of notes here, so if you hear the, whatever, it's me checking my notes because I can't remember everything that happened in this campaign in the Shadow Labyrinth because I built it probably too big for comfort. Because most of the time when I run a dungeon, it's like one game session, that's one dungeon. But the Shadow Labyrinth was actually like two, maybe three, that they stayed in there because it was so big and complicated. So, our heroes venture down into the darkness deep after Milo Beetlebeard shows them the hidden entrance. Again, the entrance was hidden in a place in Anvil where no one would ever look for it, and they needed to use the Hammer of Moradin to uncollapse a collapsed tunnel. And they got all the usual messages, abandon all hope, no trespassing, you can and will be killed if you go past this point, written in Dwarven, written in Common, written in Elven, because this place was made in such a time that, the dwarves were hiding the relics in case they should lose the war, because these were infinite resource generators, infinite food, infinite clean water, infinite information, things that you might say, well, why didn't they just use those during the war? Well, what if they lost? What if somebody shoots you with an arrow from 200 fucking yards away? And then suddenly this relic of massive power falls into enemy hands. They were not willing to risk it, so Lord Minor still has the crown of Sauric's authority, but the other three relics thus far have been safely recovered. All that remains is the Tablet of Secrets. So, they venture down into the darkness deep and they enter the antechambers. And the antechambers are kind of like the entrance area where there's no traps or monsters or anything, but there's like supply rooms and barrels and crates and cloth and, bags of cement and stuff. It almost looks like a construction zone. Like as soon as they were done building the innards, they dropped everything and they left, because war is upon us. But they do discover the place where a bunch of builders stayed, and they find the Grand Architect's room, the guy that masterminded how this place works and how it was laid out. But they find his body, his and his wife's, still in bed, their skeletons, covered in sheets, and they find a really horrible, depressing note that's like, my love, we built this horrible place together. I left you sleeping. Don't wake up. And of course, Adrian picks up the wine glass and the wine bottle. Clearly, there was a night of passionate sex beforehand, but he can see the stains of poison in both glasses. So the Grand Architect killed himself and his wife and burned the plans. And anybody who worked on it, they never got to see the big picture. They just worked on things. We work on this room. This guy makes a doodad on this end of town, and this other guy installs it. And there were too many dwarves involved to get like the big picture on this place, except for the architect and his wife. So he killed himself and his wife to make sure the innards of the Shadow Labyrinth were never completely explained to anyone. And with this war revving up, he didn't want himself or her to fall into enemy hands. So once the Tablet of Secrets was secured in its place, drank the poison wine, stayed with the wife, they both died in their sleep. So, kind of nasty. The party is kind of shaken by this, and they paw through the different construction stuff. They find like a ladder and rope and chain and a few padlocks and manticles and bits and bobs used for making traps, an old alchemy set that was for poison, etc., etc. They built this place to be a death trap. So they kind of paw through all this stuff. Is like everything you could imagine as far as like making a dungeon is here. So there's nothing to really narrow down what's ahead of you. The only thing that Milo Beetlebeard told them was to stay warm, because the Shadow Labyrinth goes so far into the earth that it becomes cold. It's too far away from the sun. The underground lakes become underground frost layers, etc., etc. It's like the further you go into hell in Dante's Inferno, the further from God's light you go, the colder and frostier and darker it gets. So they brought extra torches, they brought extra firewood. Taran was actually very good about bringing firewood with them, and so that they could make camp every night, because there's no trees to do that. So Taran was good at being prepared when they went into this dungeon to make sure they had enough heat and had enough light, because Droko and Arntor can make their shields glow as much as they want, but those glows don't give off heat. So a flashlight is fine, but you still need a campfire. And they journey down. There's a lot of stairs that just kind of go downward, and they get to the point where, like, God, we've gone so far down on so many landings, we can't possibly be under Anvil anymore. But they pass all the cobwebs, and they pass all the hanging chains, and all the warning messages that are scratched into the walls. Abandon all hope, ye who enter. This place will kill you. You will not escape the jaws of the labyrinth itself. And they finally come upon the labyrinth itself, which was a maze area. Now, if you're ever DMing a maze, like a proper labyrinth where there are right ways and wrong ways to go, the best thing to do to convey it to your players is to not draw it on your map. If you're using Roll20, just make a big square and write maze on it. Or if you're using a rollout map on a table, just draw a big square and write maze in it. And they have to figure it out for themselves. It's because if you draw it on the map, it becomes tangible, and they can see everywhere that they've ever been. And I don't know about you, but if I go into a hedge maze, I can't remember every which way I've been, and I can't see every which way I've ever been. So the only thing that I could tell them was, well, you arrive in a small room, and there's a passage that goes straight, and there's a passage that goes right. And they got to pick a way. And they walk on for 500 feet. Okay, well, now there's a passage straight ahead of you, and a passage to the left, and a passage to the right. And they walk on for 500 feet, and it's just these rooms that are connected by these long hallways, and they're gonna get lost pretty quick. And our party, they're burning through torches like crazy. Every adventure starts with, oh, you've got 6 torches and a pint of oil and this bullseye lantern and crap like that. So they were burning through that stuff fast. I think they spent 2 days in the maze itself. And of course, the whole time, Taran was writing, we took the left path, and then we took the right path, then we went straight 8 times, and they kept trying to find the edge of the maze. And truth be told, on my dungeon map, the maze itself had 3 or 4 exits. If you don't count the entrance, it had 2, 3, 4 exits. So there were multiple ways they could have gone, but they ended out on a northern exit, I think, and they journeyed on through these hallowed halls of black stone and slate and high columns and 50-foot ceilings that the place aches with cold. It's like if you're playing Pokemon Go and it's 22 degrees outside, first your hands notice, and then your nose and cheeks notice, and then you're like, God, I gotta get the fuck out of here. It gets to the point where it's everybody's holding a torch so they can stay warm, because it's colder than it ought to be. They are so far down under the earth that they're reaching the freezing level of if you're far enough down in the ocean, and the sun's light does not reach here, but it's still water, but it's still below freezing, and it sucks. So everybody's holding a torch when they finally emerge into like sort of the dungeon proper, and they come across a huge room that is flanked by two stone golems, carved out to be shaped like dwarven warriors, and they're big. They're like, you know, the huge 3x3 monsters, and between them is a pedestal with a golden triangle on it. And they're like, "Hey, look, it's the Triforce." Shut up. And they're like, "Well, it's a big piece of gold, but it's probably for something, because one side of the triangle is riveted in such a way that it looks like it fits into something, like a puzzle piece." And they go, "Well, I bet we need like two halves of a triangle or three parts of a triangle to do something down here, because clearly there are going to be like layers of defense." And let me tell you, it's not a very easy battle when you go in to fight two stone golems that size and only two of your party members have blunt weapons, because piercing weapons and slashing weapons do not do very good against like solid stone. So they struggle against these things. They get thrown into the wall. You know, Arntor, I think, actually took some kind of feat or trick or cantrip to where he could throw his hammer and have it return to him like fucking Thor, because he went straight for it. I was like, you know, whosoever wields this hammer, it's Thor's hammer. Ha ha! Shut up. So he actually got some kind of ability, like some kind of throwing weapon ability, to where it would return to him upon his will. And I don't know what book that's in or what ability that is. Don't ask me. You'll have to go looking yourself. But it was really cool for him to just fucking throw this thing and smash a golem in the face and then get it back straight away and assume a defensive stance. You know, +2 to your AC for defensive stance. And they go back and forth, and they finally smash both of these things into pieces. And they claim the golden triangle for themselves. And it's like, you know, 6x6x6 on all of its sides. But they examine it closer. It's like, yeah, you probably need like the other half of whatever this is. And they wander on through like drop away floors that lead into spike pits, and they gotta leap across. And you know, goddamn, if Terran, our fighter, didn't fall into 5 or 6 spike pits just throughout the campaign. There was at least one spike pit in every dungeon, and he fell into like 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Just like, I throw open the door and I run inside. It's a spike pit. Shit! Alright, I charge down the hallway. It's a spike pit. Fuck! I did it like, you'd think eventually they would let Adrian, their rogue, kind of lead the way, but Terran was so gung-ho, like I said, a little bit bossy, a little bit, you know, kind of the unofficial lead of the party, so he was always trying to trump ahead of everybody else, and he fell into every single goddamn spike pit that I put into these things. And he never learned his lesson, but hey, he's the tank. He's got all the armor and all the health. So I guess if anybody's gonna fall into those things and take all the damage, it may as well be somebody that's got 96 health. But you know, I poke fun, but hey, he's doing his job. Because if their rogue, if Adrian fell into one of those things and took 56 damage, he would probably die. So I guess Terran's doing his job. You know, I rag on the guy, but he was a great tank, a great, like, in everybody's face so they weren't in his party's face kind of guy. But man, he paid for it a number of times. Anyway, after a while, they came upon this kind of sanctum-looking area. It had a long stone path with water flowing down a pair of trenches on either side of the room, and it led up to this like Greek-style stairs with curling columns. And seated upon the platforms in front of these columns were Tautai. Now, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. It's an Asian word or a Mayan word or something like that. Tautai, Taute, or something like that. They are stone tigers that inside them hold pocket dimensions. Now, not only are they made of stone and they weigh like 600 pounds, so they can fucking crush you, they can bite you, they can claw you, like normal tigers can, but they share the armor class of being made of stone, and they have the ability to unhinge their jaws and fucking suck you into a pocket dimension like a vacuum cleaner. And if you don't make your fortitude save, you basically get thrown into a stone coffin in another dimension. And you've got maybe 25 seconds to break your way out, or you suffocate, because it's like a bag of holding. There's no air there. So they struggle against these things, because Terran and I think Arntor got sucked into these two like immediately, and because of their size they can only hold one like person at a time, but the goal was to suck them in, suffocate them, and then spit them out, and then grab the next guy. Thankfully, Terran and Arntor are quite powerful, and Arntor especially, who has the Hammer of Moradin, can fucking bust his way out. And if you break the stone coffin, or if you do enough damage to crack it and like shoulder your way out, you tumble out of the creature's mouth and back into the normal material plane. But poor Terran, I think he got sucked up like 3 times, because whenever you're inside the stone coffin, you can act as normal, you just can't breathe. So you hold your breath, and you've got until, I think it said 5 turns or whatever, whenever you run out of breath, to either bust your way out or you're dead. So Terran struggled mightily, but his bastard sword or his great sword or whatever was not as good at doing damage against solid stone as the Hammer of Moradin, which does blunt damage, much better for breaking rocks. So Terran barely got to be a part of that fight, because he just kept getting sucked in, because it's like dragons and breath weapons. They immediately start the fight with the breath weapon. Tao Tai always start the fight by sucking in as many people as they can, suffocating them, and then spitting them out, and then grabbing the next person. That is their battle strategy. So it's like number 1, suck somebody in. Number 2, fight whoever's left. So whenever Terran broke out, and we go around the initiative, and it's like, okay, it's the Tao Tai's turn, and then Terran's like, don't do it. And I'm like, he sucks you in again. After the 3rd or 4th time, I could tell Terran was getting pissed, because I just kept sucking him into a pocket dimension. Now, don't get me wrong. While you're in the stone coffin and you damage it and you break it out, you're also hurting the Tao Tai. So he was doing damage, but with a bit of a timer on himself. And thankfully, we did not lose anyone in the Tao Tai fight, and 2, trust me, was more than enough to challenge a party of 4. If I'd put 4 down, they would have just all been sucked in and suffocated. But Tao Tai are not to be fucked with. They're on a very short list of creatures, like rust monsters and dragons, and just things that you really don't want to deal with them if you've got another way to go forward. But the party managed to destroy both Tao Tai, and they are beat to hell. So they pass out the healing spells, they pass out the food and torches and magic potions and things like that. Like, holy crap, we're a few days into this, and we're getting just railed as we go. Thankfully, they managed to move forward, and they come to a room that is, what is it? Decagonal, where it has 10 sides. Yeah, a decagon-shaped room, and on every wall is a door. And they go, oh great, it goes in all directions. What do we do here? So they start going around trying doors, and they go, well, Adrian, find out. Finally, Terran kind of bows to one side and goes, Adrian, why don't you check these doors and see which ones are locked and which ones we can go through, etc., etc. Some of them are probably trapped. In fact, I bet the correct one is trapped. So they kind of hang back so that Adrian can do his rogue thing. And Adrian steps forward and he unrolls his thieves' tools and he's working through doors. He's like, well, this door's fake. It doesn't go anywhere. And he moves on to the next door, and it's just like an empty little 5x5. There's nothing in there. And he moves on to the next one, and he unlocks it, and he pulls it open, and a spike trap juts out straight into his like belly and impales him on the spot. And he's just like, "Hooah!" And he drops his thieves' tools and he kind of sags forward. He's like, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And they rush forward and they pull Adrian off of this gigantic spike. And as soon as they do, the spike retracts itself back into the wall. There was nothing behind the door except for this like spring-loaded bullshit that went right at them. And Adrian caught it full in the chest or full in the stomach. And at this point, we kind of had a campaign reveal, because what the party did not know was that Adrian was a woman in disguise. Now, again, I've been telling you this whole time, Adrian has a hood, Adrian has a face mask. Adrian, weeps over the death of Tannen, their wizard. Adrian has a woman's handwriting, according to Milo Beetlebeard. All these little hints throughout the campaign. They come to find out after the Tao Tai shreds the back of his leather armor, and after he gets impaled through the front with this nasty impalement spike trap, that his, like, from the waist up, his armor is wrecked. And they pull it off of him. They basically just by hand, just like so they can get to him and like do surgery and lay down spells and stuff. And I was like, Adrian, do you want to tell them what they find under your shirt? There's a couple of things I know they're bound to notice. So the party finds out Adrian is a woman. And why was he disguised as a man? Well, it's none of your damn business. And they never actually pursued this, but we'll get to it later. There's a bit of an awkward silence, because they've been treating Adrian like one of the guys, basically. And Arntor and Droko both do the lay on hands. They do the cure serious, the cure intermediate wounds, whatever it is. They throw a potion. It took a lot of fucking damage. Like, he almost died. This is impalement. This is not just like a log trap that knocks you on your ass, or a repeating dart trap that pricks you a couple of times and you roll against poison and you're done. No, this thing was like a small tree log that shoots out of the wall at 60 fucking miles an hour. Adrian was having a bad day, so they throw down a bunch of healing. They give her potions, etc., etc. They notice things. And I asked Adrian's player much later, like months after the campaign. I was like, "Hey, I'm doing Of the Mountain for D&D stories. What was Adrian's reasoning for disguising herself as a man?" And the player told me that Adrian had a huge fight, a huge disagreement with her father, and had stolen his gold purse, like the main family gold purse that they keep under the floorboards, along with her father's like magic sword, which was the origin. Whenever I started the campaign, I said, "Okay, everybody gets one free magic item. That'll be your thing, like Harry Potter's wand or Bilbo's sting. Just pick a free magic item." Adrian came to the table with a magic sword. It was a sword that she had stolen from her father, and of course her father put out a hit. Put out wanted posters for her return. So Adrian had to don the hood and the face mask and etc., etc., and disappear into the criminal underworld, where she became Adrian, the shifty gentleman who would not be swayed by prostitutes in the red velvet room, and had feminine handwriting and dexterous hands and clean fingernails, etc., etc. So the hints for the players, the hints were there the whole time, but they missed out on every single one of them. So while they were just like, "Oh my God, Adrian's a woman," Adrian and I laid down like the 5 or 6 or 7 different hints. It was you who laid down that note under my door that Milo's Beetlebeard said was feminine handwriting. You were the one that told us that all those prostitutes were dying in Lowtown, and Adrian's like, "Yeah, that was me," and stuff like that. So it was just a whole bunch of things that they completely glossed over. And that was the only reason I let Adrian like disguise her gender. Was like, okay, but we have to work together on this, player and DM, where you have to drop a big hint every session. And eventually they might figure it out. So we had feminine handwriting, covered the face, covered the hair, really close with Tannen to the point of crying over him after he had died, and more than like a buddy sort of way, very close to him. Plus, when they went to the Temple of Moradin to pass all the trials, one of which was to have sex, so you weren't thinking about sex when you talked to God. Of course, there were male and female sylph or angels or whatever you want to call them, and they heard a woman screaming in ecstasy when Adrian was in there. They just thought that was Adrian's, bedroom skill. No, that was Adrian herself. So we dropped a bunch of hints through the whole campaign, and nobody got it until the armor started getting shredded and started coming off. So Adrian made it like 7 or 8 games without anybody finding out her secret, which was very cool, very good. So they do their best to heal Adrian. They've got like a spare set of clothing and a spare, I think, like a regular like leather breastplate to kind of like squeeze her into and stuff like that. So she was not at any disadvantage, and again, nothing ever really actually came of it. Taryn, who is a little bit uncomfortable around women, like there was a lot of silence. It was a very awkward dinner that night around the campfire, but other than that, nothing really changed in the campaign itself as far as party dynamics goes. But after having faced the golems and the Tautai, they were exhausted. Adrian had been impaled, and they had to heal and recover from that, and they decided to bed down for the night again. So this was like day 3 or day 4, and tick-tock, tick-tock, time is running short as far as when the army's coming back, when the custodians are going to make their major move, etc. So time is certainly of the essence, but they've got to rest or they're not going to be prepared for what lies ahead. And they go down another set of spiraling staircases, almost like they're in a lighthouse or something. It's really tight, and it just goes down, down, down. And they find themselves in a hall of columns. And shifting back and forth between those columns are geists. And geists are like ghosts, but they're just meaner. They're these piles of like raggedy clothes with like horse skulls sticking out the front. They've got claws. They can go through walls. They're bound by all the same rules that ghosts are. And I don't know about you, but in D&D and Pathfinder, ghosts are not to be fucked with either. I mean, they start at like a challenge rating 7, so they are no small potatoes, and they have to fight these things as they go. And at the far end of this like hall of geists, or nest of geists, no doubt made up of the builders who lost their lives putting this place together, because it was a death trap. There were bound to be accidents. They find a set of double doors to put both halves of this triangle into. Now, the 2 stone golems were guarding one half, and the Tautai were guarding the other half. So they put it together like, yeah, it's the Triforce. Do-do-do-do. Shut up. And they go up to these double doors. There's a big triangular indentation, because of course there is. And they put it in there, and they turn it, and it unlocks the door, and the door opens. And they go on through, like I said, lots of other trapped rooms. There was like a lower section where they had to go through collecting these purple crystals to kind of complete the monument. And I don't know about you, but I really like Complete the Monument games. For those that don't know, Complete the Monument is like when something really great gets trashed, like a building or a city or a statue or whatever it happens to be, and you spend the whole game like finding materials or repairing it or putting it back together, or the pieces are scattered to the 4 winds and you got to put it all back, and when you do, it's great and everybody's happy. I like Complete the Monument games just because that's one of my weaknesses. But they find that they are entering like the lower section, like the frozen heart of the Shadow Labyrinth awaits them, and they find this big circular dais. They go down, 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 and they emerge into this great room, and there's lots of doors on all the walls, and they find this circular dais in the center. And Droko's kind of leading the way because he's got like the shield that glows, and he steps foot down onto the floor of this great room, and there's a mist on the floor. Like, that's how cold it has become down here, that the whole floor is covered with mist, and all they can see is this dais, and it's circular. They go up to it. It's covered with magical runes and things like that, and there are crystals inlaid in it in several locations, 2 of which are already accounted for, and 3 or 4 more are missing. And they look around. Some of the doors are open, some of them are shut. One of them is busted down inward, and they're like, did somebody beat us here? And they go, no, that's impossible. And they go, I swear to God, if Lord Minor came down here and took the Tablet of Secrets, I'm going to be so mad. But, sure enough, they find a series of bodies, 4 bodies. And these guys have been charred all to hell. Like, they got hit with like a fireball trap, like one of the big ones. And they look over the remains of these guys and are like, it looks like fighter, assassin, rogue, and druid or something like that. This is another like D&D party that got sent down here before you guys. And they look at each other and they go, I wonder if Milo has been trying to recover the relics for some time now. They're like, well, how did they get in here? The whole place is sealed up and the tunnel's been collapsed. And they go, I wonder if one of them had like stone shape or you know, mud to air, or one of those overpowered spells that lets you go through tunnels and walls that you not oughta and frustrate your DM. It looks like these guys made it all the way down here, and they were collecting crystals to put into that dais, but this fireball trap caught all of them, and they all failed their save. So a TPK via, you know, repeating fireball trap, they walked around the walls and not through the room itself. So, and they went through like a series of challenges. You know, we can see, you know, I can see where the crystal is in this mirror, but I don't see it when I look. So I look in the mirror and I walk backwards and I grab the crystal in the reflection and then I pull it back around. Oh, you've got it for real now. Good job. Or, you know, there's a crystal all the way up this like mine shaft looking thing, but it's like 100 feet up, and you know, we got to climb all the way up there and not fall and die. And you know, this one's protected by an acid trap. You can tell because there's a skeleton over there that's half melted. Like there was a party here before them, and they made it really far, but they failed. But in all eventuality, they bring back this 2 or 3 other glowing purple crystals, and they put them in the dais, and the dais starts to rotate. And it rotates completely in one direction, and then it rotates a half turn in the other direction, and then it rotates 3 times the other way, and then it quarter rotates the other way. And they're like, wow, it's like a combination lock. That's kind of cool. And then at last, half of the dais sinks into the floor, and the other half makes a half turn to rest on top of it, exposing stairs that go ever further down into the darkness. And they're like, oh my god, it keeps going. I thought this was going to be like a vault or something, and the crystals were in all different rooms for us to find. No, the Shadow Labyrinth continues to delve deeper and deeper into the oily, frozen darkness. And they go down, down, down some more. And they're like, how many floors down do you think we are? And they're like, you know, we don't have, you know, which way is north. We don't have the find north spell, and we don't have any of the spells that say how far below the earth we are. But my gosh, it just keeps going and going. And our heroes start to kind of lose faith that they're going to make it to the end of this and still have enough time to come out before the army arrives or before the custodians make their move. But fortunately for them, they arrive in the final section, the the sort of like vault area that was further down, beyond a pair of living gargoyles that they had to take care of. And they reach the place, and the big hidden section of wall moves to one side, and they see that this book or some sort of tombstone shaped thing is sitting up on like a pedestal or a conductor's, I guess, what do they call it in church? A pappus? I don't know. Anyway, a place where you would put a book so it could sit open and be on display. But around the room, and this is a round room, around the room are an endless number of angelic statues, and they are all covered with half-melted candles that are still burning, and they look to be in horrible agony, praying to the sky. They've got wax draped all the way down through them. Their wings are broken. Their eyes are hollow shells of darkness. And they're like, oh no. And they look around like everything made of stone in this place has come to life and attacked us. And there's like 30 or 40 of these fucking things. It's like, there's no way. Like, as soon as we grab this thing, they're all gonna spring to life and murder our faces. Like, this is like an atrium of fucking weeping angels or something like that we ought not to take this lightly. So they argue back and forth for a while, like, how do we grab this thing and make it out alive? And finally, it is Arntor who decides to be the sacrificial lamb. Arntor kind of puts the hammer of Morden on his hip to one side on its little hook. And he's like looking around warily, and Terran's like pulled out his great sword. And Droko's like spinning his sword spinning his hammer a couple times to keep his wrist loose. He's pulled out his shield. They're ready to do battle. And Arntor reaches this display and sees that it's not a book or a tombstone. It is a tablet. And on the tablet is written just gibberish in Dwarven, in the human language, in Elven, etc., etc. It's an amalgamation of letters that move about across the surface in a golden filigree. It's like, it doesn't actually say anything, Arntor. It's just like, it's garbled nonsense in all different languages. And he goes, well, what's it made of? Is it stone? And I go, it's jade, or at least it looks like it is. It's green stone with gold filigree. It's like, all right, well, I slowly reach and I kind of check over my shoulder to make sure my friends are backing me up. It's like I slowly reach and I pick up the Tablet of Secrets. And I go, you've got the Tablet of Secrets. And everybody holds their breath. They look at all the angelic statues with the waxy candles all over them, waiting for them to spring to life and attack them, because there's fucking 40 of them. And Arntor starts to slowly walk backwards. You're gonna be okay. Nobody's really moving. They make a little semicircle around him. They're gonna make it to the threshold. They wait. And then all the candles go out. And they're like, fuck, I knew it! And they go back to back and they get into their battle stances. And they see a young elven gentleman standing there. And he's holding a ghostly... he's like a wisp of wind. You can see through him. Almost like the ghosts in Lord of the Rings. He's tainted green. He can see through him. He doesn't have any weight. He's just kind of blowing, phantom wind that isn't there. Like, I must know how to cure this disease. And he holds up a copy of the Tablet of Secrets. And then next to him, a portly human lady decides, I want to make my fortune. I want to make 1,000,000 gold. How do I do it? And she holds up her own copy of the Tablet of Secrets. She is also ghostly and pale. And then they go around to like 6 or 8 different people, and they actually go over to a ghostly recording of Milo Beetlebeard, much younger, much bigger armor, much bigger sword than the one that Terran got from his office on his back. He goes, I must know how the dwarves will win this conflict between the races. And he holds up his copy and is like, they're seeing all the previous people. I want to know, won't you show me? I need to know. I must know. Tell me. Tell me how to do this. Tell me how to do that. I must know the secrets of. And they see all of these different people that have used and abused the Tablet of Secrets throughout the ages. Because the tablet itself is technically a dwarven relic, but it wasn't made by the dwarves. This was probably handed down by a god or something. This is a cornerstone of creation. It's not like a hammer that somebody made or a staff that makes plants grow. This thing knows everything, and it will tell you everything, given that you will pay the price. So they, Arntor, after they see that the ghosts are not attacking them, Arntor and the others kind of make their way out of the big circular room. They're watching the statues, making sure nobody's making any moves or turning their heads to look at them or nothing. And nothing happens. There's no big giant like 40-on-4 angel statue fight. And they're so relieved because they're low on spells, they're low on health, they're low on food and resources. They can't handle another big climactic fight. But it's so cold. It's so cold, and they're going to run out of firewood soon. So they got to make it double time back out of the Shadow Labyrinth. And thankfully for them, Taryn, like I told you before, had written down all the passages they had taken in the labyrinth portion. So once they made it back to the maze, and they did, Taryn just read off the directions backwards, and they made it all the way back out of the Shadow Labyrinth unscathed, like unharassed by any other traps or monsters or guardians of any sort. It was very cool that they had written all this shit down. And they made it out back into Anvil, and they warmed up. They were rubbing their arms. They had run out of firewood. They had run out of torches. They were running low on lantern oil, and God forbid they run out of lights in a place called the Shadow Labyrinth, because it would have sucked to be them. But yeah, they had clerics to cast the light spell, but still, light does not equal warmth, and they would have frozen to death. So they make it back out into Anvil proper, and they're like, yes, we made it. We got the Tablet of Secrets. They're high-fiving each other. They're feeling like the big, strong heroes. We gotta get this to Milo and make sure that it doesn't get stolen or misused or busted or anything, because it's jade, or it's some semblance of jade. It can be destroyed, like the other relics can. They are made of mortal materials, so they can be destroyed, especially given that the Staff of the Harvest was in pieces when they found it anyway. So they know they got to take good care of this thing. And they go to the office of Dwarf Pope Milo Beetlebeard, and they find that he is not home. And they go, where is he? And they ask one of his assistants or one of his squires, like, Milo Beetlebeard has been missing for days. And like, as soon as you guys left on whatever it is that you're doing, because Milo doesn't tell them what these heroes are doing gathering the relics. As soon as you guys left on your next errand, he left the office and he was gone. And they go, oh, okay, thanks. And then they leave, and as soon as the squire leaves, they go back into his office to kind of toss his office. And hidden in plain sight, amongst all of his mail and other things, is a picture of the sword, the sword of blasting that Taryn got from General Milo Beetlebeard's office in the fortress. And they're like, oh, look at this. And they open the envelope. And inside is a letter. It's a letter from Milo to them that says they've been doing a great job so far, and if they're reading this letter and they didn't die in the Shadow Labyrinth, that they have come as far as that he's very happy that they've come this far, that he can't wait to see them eradicate the custodians, he can't wait to see them save the city, that this is coming up on the end of what the Tablet of Secrets told him all those years ago, that he would need to do this, this, and this to win the war, and then afterwards make ready for the army's return. And the only way to do that would be to trim the fat from the city itself, to get rid of the elderly, the insane, the infirm, the homeless, the prostitutes that invite disease to their bodies, that he would need to start an organization of like-minded people like the custodians. And yes, the big trope of the benefactor betraying you, but not so much betraying as avoiding. Because he doesn't want to attack our heroes, and he does not want to steal the relics from our heroes. He wants them to win. He wants them to destroy the custodians entirely. They have basically served their purpose. They've destroyed a huge swath of the elderly. They emptied out the asylum. They burned down a hospital. They destroyed all the halfway houses. The homeless are gone and dead. Prostitutes out on the streets, serving pimps and stuff, deregulated, they're all dead too. Drug dealers, scabs, homeless, anybody who's not contributing to society. The custodians have basically done all the cleaning that they're gonna do to the city itself. And now it is up to our heroes to find and destroy them. So yes, Milo created the custodians, had them serve their purpose, built a group of superheroes like our dear adventurers, armed them with all the relics of Anvil, and then said, okay, come and get us. Come destroy the custodians. And he's gonna sit back and watch them do it. The Tablet of Secrets told Milo that if the army arrived and there wasn't enough room, that there would be anarchy, that the tax money, the food, the beds that were needed, they just wouldn't be there, that one of the only things you could do would be to cull the herd. And here he is, one of the top standing generals of the army. He has a militaristic standpoint. He used to have access to high holy powers, and thankfully he lost his powers to the Tablet of Secrets, because he sure as hell would have lost them doing this. So nobody noticed him fall twice. So it was the perfect excuse to never use magic again, that the Tablet of Secrets stole his ability to use magic before he fell philosophically. So Milo has been controlling the custodians, but they've served their purpose now. Please, with the powerful relics in hand, go destroy them. And once you've destroyed them, you can destroy me as well. And when the armies of Anvil return to their home, there will be enough room, and there will be enough water, and there will be enough food, and that is how things will go. And they are just fucking disgusted. Like, they have been used this whole time by a guy that knows he's gonna die. Like, he's not gonna fight them. He's gonna wait for them to come and wreck face, and he's gonna let them do it. He's not gonna tell the other custodians exactly what's going on. So, this evil faction that he's been building up for X number of decades has come to the chopping block. Now come and swing the axe. So, obviously they don't know where the custodians are, but they do have the Tablet of Secrets, and Milo did not leave them a map to where the custodians' lair is, because that would have left evidence in his office, and what if somebody else found it? So, they stroke their chins for a while, and they go and they decide, okay, well, we're going to have to use the Tablet of Secrets at least once, because we need to know what can be done to save Anvil from the custodians. Because as soon as that army arrives home, just say like 1 in 5 of those people has PTSD or missing limbs or will never walk again or will never be able to serve a building job or some way to contribute to society. Even if like 1 in 5, that's still 50,000 people. We cannot allow the custodians to fucking butcher 50,000 dwarves. We cannot let this happen. We need to know from the Tablet of Secrets how to stop them. There has to be some definitive way. And even though Milo has been playing the long game, having, having let his king die on the battlefield because Saurik the First was not going to lead them to victory. Somebody else was. And Saurik the Second also died on the battlefield. Milo allowed this to happen too. You know why? Because he was a paladin who had healing powers and let his king and then his other king die on the battlefield. That's a pretty bad hint right there. But Milo's loyalty was to Anvil itself, not to his king. It was to his people. And if he had to sacrifice some people to preserve the greater whole, well, he was willing to do that. Now we needed to learn how to stop the custodians before they got a hold of this army, because clearly Milo doesn't think they can do it. Like, if they arrive home in 3 days and there's even one custodian left, they could find some way. If they were responsible for the heart rot, or if they're wielding, maces of annihilation where you could just poke somebody and they die, they'd make a huge, just a butchery of these guys returning home battle-weary. And they're like, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? What do we ask, first of all? And they argue for a very long time. What do we ask? Who is going to ask? Again, because the Tablet of Secrets will take a price. It could rob you of your ability to use magic. It could rob you from ever growing any stronger than you are. It could enfeeble you. It could flip your gender. It could rob you of all your worldly possessions. It carries a heavy price. Now, who's going to bear that price? And they argue about this for a while, like, can we find somebody who would do that? No, that's unethical, and stuff like that. Basically, they know that Milo has conditioned them to want to save Anvil, and they walked into the whole thing. They have been programmed to sacrifice themselves for the city itself. If not throwing themselves at the custodians, but to save the city and to use the Tablet of Secrets to find out how they will attain their victory. And so it is Arntor, our dwarven cleric of Sylvanas, who steps up to the Tablet of Secrets eventually. It's like, I will use it. And they go all the way back to the fort where they found the goddess's tear, the gem. And they go to the great big room, the big Sistine Chapel room, so whatever happens, it won't hurt anybody or cause any collapses or anything. And they're like, all right. And they argue about the wording for a while, and I assure them this is not like a genie or anything, where it's just going to fuck you out of your answer. It will be big. I'm going to do like a write-up of all the things that the Tablet of Secrets will tell you. You just have to ask the proper question. And Arntor, he stands there. He's got his friends around him. He hands off, or he puts it against the wall because nobody else can wield it, the Hammer of Moradin. And Arntor holds up the tablet, and he goes, what can be done to save Anvil from the custodians? And the tablet grows brightly, and the golden letters start to arrange themselves, and he disappears into a bright radius of green and golden light as his head is filled with hundreds of facts and figures and scenarios and different things that would tell him all about how to solve this really complicated problem. And truly and honestly, the tablet has many things to say, among which is the most important sentence of all. And that is to do nothing, because Lord Jacob Minor is in Anvil to destroy the custodians. And, Arntor is there holding his head. Oh God, why? Why is that? And Jacob Minor worships Bahamut, the god of evil dragons, but so too do the custodians, because in their lair they have a sphere of annihilation, a big one, like the size of a house. And if you touch a sphere of annihilation, you cease to be. You are not dead. Your soul doesn't go anywhere. You are erased from existence. They have a sphere of annihilation the size of a house, and they worship it as the Eye of Tiamat. And they throw, that's where all the elderly went after Milo was done doing last rites. That's where all the prostitutes were thrown into, etc., etc. They basically like feed it like it's a beast or something, even though it's an inanimate object. But they worship it as though it were the Eye of Tiamat. Lord Minor, somehow, learned of this and came to Anvil with 50 guys, or 50, 60, 80 guys, armed to the teeth, on the pretense of delivering medical supplies. But Lord Jacob Minor was here to fight a war, because the custodians were not worshiping Tiamat in such a way that was acceptable to him. So Jacob Minor is here to destroy the custodians. In other words, let them fight. And that is where we will leave off for today. So it looks like we're going to have one extra part to this story. So until then, I will see you guys on the next D&D stories. Keep gaming.
Hi guys, T here. Remember to hit that like button for me on your way out. If you'd like to see artwork and maps from my gaming table, check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to toss a few gold pieces into your humble bard's hat. Links in the description below. Keep gaming!